GrowCFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using GrowCFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today, growcfo.net.
Hello, and welcome to the GrowCFO Show. I'm your host, Kevin Appleby, and today I've got one of our GrowCFO XLF trainers with us, Danielle Stein Fairhurst. Danielle, welcome to the GrowCFO Show.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to meet you finally.
Indeed. We've exchanged emails very often, but it is lovely to sit here and actually put a face to a name.
I've heard a lot about you.
I've never actually attended one of your Excel modelling courses, but I understand that they're absolutely brilliant.
There's still time.
Yeah. But Danielle, for the audience, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm a financial modeling specialist. That's my world is working in Excel, and the majority of what I do is financial modeling. So I go into organizations and build financial models for them. And the rest of my time I spend talking about it. I've written a couple of books. If you can see behind me, Kevin, I've got a bookshelf in my office, which is full of two of the same books. One is a Wiley Finance book, and the other one is Financial Modeling in Excel for Dummies. So I wrote those a couple of years ago. And I've just always loved the whole online community, which comes together with training and just basically talking about Excel and financial modeling is pretty much what I do.
Outside of work, Danielle, how much of your life do you run in a spreadsheet?
A fair bit. Everything involves a spreadsheet with me.
The shopping list, the to-do list.
Of course.
You're not tempted by any clever tools like Notion or things like that to do?
I've used a few sort of little task lists, but they usually end up back in Excel.
Right. So how did you get into this financial modeling in the first place?
Yeah, it was just something I kind of started. I think I probably didn't realize that's what it was called because I started out, I was traveling as when I was young, and most Australians end up in London at some point. And of course I did that, and I got into investment banking while I was there and started using Excel. Then that was where I first sort of started to use it and just kind of continued from that. So my career's always been with Excel and modeling, and just started as a consultant working in a lot of different industries. I became a Microsoft MVP a couple of years ago. As sort of part of that, I get to talk to Microsoft about the new features that are coming out and get to talk to lots of people about Excel, which is the thing that I really love. That's pretty much where I've come from.
So are you an accountant by background?
No, I mean, I have an accounting qualification, but I never worked as an accountant as such. I have more of a sort of management accounting or analytical type of background.
Yeah. So you teach in the classroom for GrowCFO on the XLF program. Tell us a little bit about what you do there.
So that was wonderful to be able to design that course. So we designed it from scratch and wanted to take people through the entire overview of financial modeling best practice and the tools and techniques that you need to have a really good foundation in financial modeling. So we cover a lot of the foundational stuff with best practice, the do's and don'ts. And a lot of it is common sense. Things like the linking and the fact that you have to have consistency of formulas and how to practically do that, for example. So if you've got a block, like a calculation block of data, you should have exactly the same formula all the way across and down the block of data. And I mean, that's something that you probably do instinctively, but most people don't realize how important that is for financial modeling best practice. Firstly, it saves you a lot of time and it will reduce errors and make it a lot easier to audit. And from a technical perspective, you can either use the dollar signs, when you use the referencing and you anchor the reference and copy across and down, But we have this wonderful new feature that's come out in the last couple of years called dynamic arrays, which are basically made for financial modeling. This idea of having just one single formula that just automatically spills across and down. So you don't need to worry about putting in your referencing. So we cover stuff like that.
Wow. So take a financial modeler like me. I first met a spreadsheet in about 1984, 85, something called VisiCalc, which arrived on the first ever IBM PC that arrived in our accounting practice. And I sort of graduated from that through SuperCalc into Lotus 123, into Excel, built some fairly big models. But I don't think in my life I've ever been on an Excel modeling course. What sort of bad habits do you think you'd be teaching to getting rid of for somebody like me?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about this morning actually was the bad habit that some people often do where you're editing a formula and then you just kind of click somewhere else because it works. You know that works. But to try to reduce error, you should always hit the enter key. You should look at the formula. Does it look right? Does it look sensible? Is that the number that you intended for it to be? Things like that. I think that people often they're modeling quite fast and then they kind of move on without looking back at the numbers and just using that best practice of making sure that the numbers are right before they move on to the next thing. And some people edit a formula and then they move onto the next page without actually looking what the number was. I've seen that done before.
Yeah, so there probably would be some benefit for somebody like me going on one of your courses.
Maybe. Yeah, a lot of it's common sense, but there's a lot of things like that and the new stuff. A lot of people haven't seen the new stuff. So it's a good grounding in perhaps looking at the things that we've always done previously, but then applying some of the new features. We even get into lambdas in a little bit further on down the track, which are quite a more advanced type of formulas. And sometimes we need to use these lambda formulas to get certain things to work.
Gosh, you're talking foreign language now to a modeler. And I modeled a lot with COVID. I was consulting. Probably done very little of it since we started GrowCFO because it's been a different type of work. So I'm probably totally out of touch with all these wonderful new things that have happened in the last 3-4 years. So lambda.
Well, they're all still there. They're all still there, the old things, but some of the new things are just amazing. So the dynamic arrays I mentioned, the lambda functions mean that you can actually build your own function, which is very cool.
Wow.
Being able to do that. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, if you've ever gone, gee, I wish Excel could do that. And you can actually create your own functions, which is very cool.
Yeah. What about AI?
We're just starting to get Copilot inside Excel. I mean, Excel in terms of pattern recognition and things like flash fill, that's been around for years. There's a lot of predictive stuff that's been happening for a long time in Excel. But now we've got Copilot in there that's integrated within Excel itself. I can't see it ever being able to actually build a model for us, but we certainly should be getting to grips with some of the new features that are out there and certainly making sure that we understand what AI can do for us. Whether it can actually build a model yet, I'm not sure.
Interesting times. And one thing I do recall Adam Shilton quoting in a session that we ran together is that AI will never be as bad as it is today.
That's true.
So we're right at the point of that just being a toddler in the lifespan of things right now. It's growing very, very quickly and frighteningly quickly.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned when we were chatting before we started recording about the Excel World Cup.
Oh, yes.
Tell me something about that.
Yeah, the Microsoft Excel World Championship is coming up at the beginning of December. It's very exciting. There is some battles that happen
by the time people are listening.
Yes, maybe. Well, it happens every year. They run battles throughout the year. I'm actually a commentator for the online battles. I've been doing it for a couple of years. So they have these kind of battles that happen every couple of months or so, and there's hundreds or thousands of people competing, but then there's the top competitors get to compete on the live stream so we can watch them. So they've got these problems that they need to solve, and whoever can solve them as quickly as possible. And you're actually watching them on the screen. And of course, they're writing these formulas that are they go like down half the page, incredibly complex formulas on the fly. It's absolutely amazing to watch. Not a lot of best practice going on there, I must say. I do struggle with that a little bit, because the concept of just kind of getting an answer out quickly is not really something that the whole point of financial modeling when you're using Excel is about having reusable formulas that are robust and good formatting, that other people can follow what you've done. And when you are competing in the Microsoft Excel World Championships, it's just about boom, 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 and getting it out as quickly as possible. So we don't worry too much about formatting and layout and things like that. But I'm a commentator where we try to sort of interpret, I suppose, for the people who are watching, what the heck is going on. It's like, wow, usually they're writing these lambda functions, and just trying to sort of follow what they're doing is quite a challenge. And to try to explain to the audience what they're doing, it's like, wow, there's an interesting use of that function. I didn't think of using it like that. And whoa, there's a shortcut you don't see very often. And he's got himself into a bit of trouble there. I don't know how he's going to get out of this one. And I hope this is going to go the right way for him, and stuff like that. And just talk about, of course, it's always
fantastic. That's
really fun.
A new take on commentary. And that sounds
really fun.
Much more akin to a soccer or a
absolutely
rugby commentary than it does to, say, a cricket commentary. I was thinking this.
Well,
this is probably more in the cricket style, where you're talking about the pigeon on the pitch while you're waiting for something to actually happen.
It can be a little bit like that. I mean, the games last between 10 and 30 minutes, so they're not super fast. So there's a fair bit going on as we go through it. And then the finals happen in Las Vegas. I am going to be getting on a plane next week and going to Las Vegas to watch the finals in the esports arena in the Luxor Hotel in Vegas. And yeah, very much looking forward to that. It'll be great. They've also got the financial modeling. I didn't mention the Financial Modeling World Championship is also part of that. So the big focus is on the Excel Championships, but there's also concurrently running a Financial Modeling World Cup as well, which is more about modeling skills and building a model. So similar, but a kind of a different competition, and that runs at the same time. So there's a couple of different championships that happen. So there's the Microsoft Excel World Championship, which is the big one. The Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge, which is for university students or college students. So they've got students coming from all over the world to compete. There's the Financial Modeling World Cup. And there's also a conference called the Active Cell, and I'm going to one of the speakers for that event. So a lot going on during that week.
Yeah. And you talk about some debates taking place as well.
Yes. So Paul Barnhurst, who runs a fabulous podcast and all sorts of other things, is organising a debate where some financial modelers go head to head and argue and discuss, and probably mostly argue about those sorts of really contentious issues. So some financial modelers get very overly het up about these certain things. Some of the things that we'll be talking about are things like circular references. Should you have a circular reference or not? I know some modelers say that when you're calculating the interest, it's on an average balance. That then gives you a circular reference. You should then allow the circular reference. No. That's horrible. I don't think you should do that. And yeah, models get very excited about that one. The thing of using VBA, you probably have used VBA if you've been using Excel for a long time. We tend not to use VBA as much as we used to, whereas a lot of modelers still use it a lot. So
I always got somebody else to write the model if you did VBA. I gave up on.
Sounds like a good idea.
That's the one thing that I hated about moving out of Lotus 123 into Excel. I could write macros forever in Lotus 123, but I just never got my head around VBA in Excel.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of the things that I used to use VBA for, we now have Power Query, for example, or there's other more sophisticated tools that can do it. But, VBA still work more or less.
I found that a lot of things that I used to write macros to do actually just ended up being built into the system in formula. Or the system
Exactly.
would get so much more powerful. Back in the day, you didn't have multiple sheets within your model. A model was one sheet. And if
Oh,
you were building
wow.
a big one, you had to
Oh,
import
gosh.
data from one sheet to another sheet.
Really?
That was where I ended up writing macros to do that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
A lot
That
of
ages me, Danielle.
Yeah, that's before my time. So a lot of the times we would use VBA because we didn't have the functionality in Excel. So,
Yes.
and now we do often. So we tend not to use it as much, but some modelers still use it. So we'll be arguing about stuff like that.
Yeah. Hey, passion and Excel, they're not things that I normally associate with each other. I just tend to think of it as a tool that you can get on with stuff. But gosh, you're making the whole world of Excel and financial modeling sound really, really exciting.
Oh, it's a very special place indeed.
So if somebody signs up for your XLF financial modeling course, what can they expect? How does the thing run?
Yeah, so we decided to do it 4 days consecutively, so 2 hours a day. That's partly because of the time zone, because me being in Sydney means that the time of day is always hard to find a time that works for people. So if we keep it down to 2 hours, that's usually better. And having it consecutive days, I often find work really well because you kind of get that momentum and you get a chance to practice in between. So we actually ran the first session this morning. And so the next 3 days we'll be running the rest of it. So this morning was about more the theory and the fundamentals. Then we get into the tools and functions. So some of the things like the dynamic arrays, the functions that you need. So the formulas and the functions that you would use, so the tools that you would need for modeling. And then on the third day, we get into linking the financial statements. So being able to put together a P&L, a cash flow, and a balance sheet, being able to link that whole concept of linking them together and then running scenarios on it. So having best case scenario, base case scenario, worst case scenario, that sort of thing, because a lot of people don't do that properly. It's actually really simple doing a, drop down box, best case scenarios, all the numbers change. It's a very straightforward process. And because I often find people would maybe have a different tab for each scenario, or they might save the entire model as a different scenario. And it works, but it just means that you have multiple copies of the same model. So it's much better to just have the formulas changing for each version of it. And then on the final day, we build a full financial model from start to finish. So we spend the whole 2 hours just actually applying everything that they've learned.
So it's 4 sessions, consecutive days.
That's right.
We're running these once a quarter. They are live. Yes.
Completely
They're
live.
very much live. So tell us a little bit about how the classroom works.
So it's completely no recordings and cameras on and watching the screen. So there is never a dull moment. So it's quite intense because it's Excel, of course. Everything is we set up these templates in advance, which you have ready to go. So people we give you time to work through the exercises either by yourself, together with me, or we do a few breakout rooms as well. So actually working through the exercises. So we it's all very well to learn, Excel training. Well, you wouldn't know, Kevin. You said you haven't been on an Excel training course.
Never done a spreadsheet modeling course or a spreadsheet training course in my life.
But a lot of Excel training is like, this is this formula, here's this one, let's do this one, and it's kind of you go through one after the other. The skill of the modeler is taking a problem and then creating a solution. So we cover all the different functions and tools and formulas and things in Excel. But then we say, okay, here's a problem. How are you going to solve it? And you then will think through which tool or which technique I'm going to use. Would I maybe use a VLOOKUP No, you wouldn't, because that's the old version of an XLOOKUP. Is got a lot more functionality if, of course, you're using the latest version of Excel. And maybe you'd use, I don't know, another.
Debunked one of my favourite formulas. I love VLOOKUP.
I thought you'd like that one. I thought you'd like that. Yes, there's nothing wrong with the VLOOKUP. The VLOOKUP still works very, very, very well. But an XLOOKUP, hey, that's a lot better.
Yeah. So you've developed, though, courses for LinkedIn Learning that are very much video on demand. So that is what we're doing here. How would you say it's
really
better
different
than video on demand?
Yeah, it is just completely different dynamic, and also live in the classroom is completely different again. So I haven't done a lot of live training that's not being recorded, and I love it. I really do. Just having that engagement is just fantastic. You have to work through, people are really switched on and making sure that everybody is with us every step of the way. But if somebody gets left behind, we've got it's quite a popular course, pretty much full classes. So you can't stop and just help one person. So I've given all of the completed versions are there. So we kind of have to go at a pace that keeps people challenged, but doesn't leave people behind. And I love that. I find it's hard to get that balance right, but it's great. I think it works really well, because when you do recording, everybody knows that it's recorded, and they'll nip off, get a cup of tea. They'll go, oh, I've got to pick up my kids, or they're nipping in and out because they know that it's recorded. They think they're going to watch the recording. They probably won't. So I think the live works really well. But then the in-person is completely different again, totally different dynamic. You've got that engagement. You can look them in the eye and you can see whether they're with you or not. Whereas online, their cameras are on. All of them have their cameras on, which is fantastic. But it's still just a little bit harder to keep their attention. And it's just a bit of just very different dynamic.
That's what we tried to create with XLF. We said, look, we want something that's as close to physically being in a classroom.
It is. It's very similar.
I think we just about got there, but no, you want to be taught spreadsheet best practice by the best. So you want Danielle from Sydney. Well, hey, we're not all going to jump on a plane to Sydney to come to one of your live courses. Likewise, you can't spread yourself thinly to be all over the world delivering these. So,
I try. I do try. I do travel an awful lot, and I love it.
Yeah. But
with the LinkedIn Learning, I didn't mention that's different again, in that it's highly polished.
Yeah.
So the sound is very good, the audio, and it's very concise, and it's quite clipped, and there's no wasted. You don't have time. You have to stop it and then try it yourself. So it takes you a lot longer. Like the courses might only go for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but it'd probably take you a full day to go through it, because it's a much more polished experience. Yeah. So it's kind of, again, a different medium.
If you actually get as far as doing the course at all, because that's probably the biggest issue we looked at what we were doing previously in GrowCFO around some video on demand courses for all sorts of things. And now the issue was always that getting people to actually get round to doing the courses. There's the idea, I must learn about this. Oh, I'll do it next week. Next week never arrives. And people realize after a year, I've paid all this money for a membership. I wanted to do all this training. I've never actually done it. That was the problem.
Very true.
The problems that we were trying to solve with bringing live training into the picture. So you put a date in people's diary that they're committed to. It's not recorded. So you've got to turn up on the day and do it. I think it works really well. And learning within a cohort of people works. So limiting the number to a sensible sized classroom. So it's not a webinar where you've got 100, 150 people on. I think you're
just talking to a blank wall. I mean, you can't.
Yeah. And your current course, I think it topped out at about 25 or so people.
Yeah.
That's about the right number to do this with. That's full. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to have any more than that, I think.
Yeah. Danielle, it sounds absolutely fascinating. I think we've certainly brought Excel and financial modeling alive in this session. A topic that can potentially be quite boring and quite geeky, but we've done anything but.
Never. You can't say that. Not at all.
I just love the idea of you giving a commentary on somebody who's putting a model together. I've just got to listen to that at some point.
It's really fun. It's really fun. I know it can be seen to be a dry subject, but I don't think so at all.
Yeah. Danielle, thank you hugely for being this week's guest on the GrowCFO show.
Thanks, Kevin.